Listening to Carl Jung is truly interesting. When your energy stops chasing, everything starts running towards you. Carl Jung and Vibrational Detachment. Chasing is a vibration born from lack. Anything born from lack carries a signal that makes it slowly move away from you. Have you ever felt that the more you desire something, the more it eludes you? The more you wait for a message, the more it doesn't come. The more you wish for others to see and understand you, the more forgotten you feel. This doesn't happen because you are unworthy, nor because of cruel fate. It happens because the energy you emit, though silent, is powerful, saying, I lack, I need, I am not enough without it. Even if you smile, stay calm, or try to appear fine, your energy field is always more honest than your words, and it creates a corresponding reaction in reality. You don't attract with thoughts, you attract with frequency. And as long as your energy is chasing and clinging, at that very moment, you inadvertently push away what you desire. This is not a story about desires, but a story about vibrations. Only when you stop seeking, stop controlling, and stop affirming that you are lacking, do you return to your center, where you no longer need to attract, but begin to shine. Theory of consciousness and vibration. Some vibration don't need to be heard, but still change a room. A person walks in, says nothing, does nothing special, but all eyes turn to them. Conversely, there are people who, no matter how hard they try, make others feel heavy or realize something is off. This is not about words, but about the energy field, which never lies. Jung did not call it vibrational energy in the modern spiritual sense, but he deeply understood that consciousness, both conscious and unconscious, is a living magnetic field. When you emit vibrations from lack, from a place full of desire, control, and anxiety, you are sending a signal. I don't have, I'm scared, I'm not enough. And the universe, along with those around you, responds not based on what you say, but on who you truly are. In analytical psychology, Carl Jung explained that every desire stemming from a wounded ego activates the shadow within. The shadow is not just the negative part, but everything you reject, push away, or dare not acknowledge within yourself. When you pursue love out of fear of loneliness, you are pursuing from the shadow, the belief that you cannot be whole alone. When you pursue success because you feel unworthy, you act from an internal crack instead of genuine passion. Jung called this projection, the phenomenon where the unconscious mind projects our unintegrated parts onto the external world. In his research, he wrote that projection transforms the world into a replica of our unconscious face. Therefore, the world does not reflect reality, but reflects the unseen wounds within us. Imagine you enter a new relationship. Outwardly, you appear confident, happy, needing nothing. But deep inside, you constantly check your phone, wait for every message, imagine countless scenarios if the other person doesn't respond as expected. This is a typical vibration of lack. Even if you don't say it, that energy radiates and the other person feels it, not through words, but through the tension in your eyes, your heart rate, or the silence between words. This causes them to gradually withdraw, not because they don't like you, but because they don't want to be drawn into an energy that demands to be filled. Jung wrote that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. As long as you don't confront the true motives behind your actions, you will continue to be driven by it, mistaking it for destiny. Many people try to attract what they want. They read books on the law of attraction, practice positive affirmations, and imagine an ideal future. But they don't realize that it's not what you want that is attracted, but who you are being. If your underlying energy emanates from fear, a sense of lack, or self-insecurity, you're simply sending a clear signal. I don't have, I'm not enough. And according to the law of frequency, you will attract experiences that reinforce that reality. In different people, missed opportunities, or relationships that mirror your self-doubt. Jung clearly distinguished between the ego and the soul. The ego is the part that wants to control, plan, possess, and prove. The soul, conversely, is the part that needs no reason to exist. When you act from the ego, you always feel compelled to do something, to be chosen, to be kept, to avoid loss. But when you live from the soul, you no longer need to chase, because you realize, I am myself, and what belongs to me will stay. In the undiscovered self, Jung said that the soul demands your truth, not loyalty to conformity. The soul does not need you to try to please others, but needs you to courageously live your inner truth. The vibration born from lack is essentially the vibration of fear. Fear of abandonment, fear of unhealed memories, fear of an inner child, still waiting for someone to come and say, you are worthy, you are enough. But no one can bring that from the outside if you haven't sent that signal from within. As Jung said, who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes. You don't need to search anymore. What you are looking for is not ahead, but lies in the frequency you emit every moment. If you shift that frequency from begging to presence, from expectation to steadfastness, from anxiety to trust, you will no longer need to chase. Everything will find you, not because you do the right thing, but because you have become the right person. Story 1. Carla. This is the profound truth Jung wanted us to understand. You don't attract by what you want, but by who you are. When the energy within you continues to emit signals of lack, waiting, or fear of abandonment, then external reality will forever be a mirror reflecting that vibration. Listen to Carla's story, a vivid and authentic example of what Jung called a psychological wound that cries out louder than words. Carla was an intelligent, independent, and very self-aware woman. At 34, she went through a painful breakup with the man who had been her whole world. After that, she did not run from the pain. Instead, Carla embarked on an admirable healing journey, reading books, meditating, journaling, attending therapy sessions, practicing self-care, and rebuilding her self-esteem. On the outside, Carla looked like a model of a woman who had overcome her past. But there was one thing she couldn't explain. Every time she started a new relationship, no matter how gentle and promising, everything always fell into the same pattern. The other person gradually distanced themselves, the relationship became fragile, and eventually broke up for no clear reason. The truth came clearer, not through reason, but through a moment of profound awakening. In an intensive therapy session, the therapist looked straight into her eyes and said, "Your energy is not waiting for love. It is begging for validation." That statement hit the core of what all of Carla's healing efforts had overlooked. She hadn't truly let go. She had only done everything to prove that she was worthy of love. Although her outward appearance had changed, her inner energy still clung, not to a specific person, but to a pattern. Someone will come to heal me, someone will validate that I am enough. Carla was not living in presence with new relationships. She was living in the unconscious expectation that this time someone would act differently, so she wouldn't feel like a failure in love anymore. She wasn't loving, she was waiting to be saved. Jung once said, "We do not attain enlightenment by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." Enlightenment doesn't come from imagining light, but from the courage to face the darkness within. And the darkness Carla had to face was not her ex or a painful past, but the unconscious belief that she was not whole unless chosen by someone. This explains why all her positive healing actions were still guided by a begging energy. That was not genuine self-mastery, but control disguised. A form of "I will love myself as long as someone validates that I am worthy of love." But energy does not operate on conditions. Your vibrational field doesn't care about the checklist you've completed. It only responds to the signal of your true inner self. From then on, Carla's reality constantly reflected a single lesson. When you demand validation, you emit a vibration that "I am not enough." And the universe, as Jung pointed out, does not answer what you want, but answers who you are. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But if you still need someone to validate you, you are not truly yourself. You are just a shadow seeking an image. After that therapy session, Carla did not change her strategy to be loved. She changed her mindset. She didn't force herself to stop feeling, but began to observe her impulses when meeting new people. Whenever she felt expectations too early, she didn't blame herself but asked, "Am I loving this person, or am I waiting for them to validate that I am enough?" This self-awareness was the turning point of her vibration. Not loving less, not slowing down, but loving from a place of wholeness. From then on, her energy no longer emitted a begging signal. She was no longer on the frequency of "choose me so I can be me." She chose herself. And when you choose yourself, the world is no longer a place to be saved, but a place to live, share, and shine. No chasing, no waiting, no proving, just simply being present. Jung wrote, "Memories, dreams, reflections. The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. The most terrifying thing is not being rejected, but daring to accept oneself entirely. When you do that, you don't need anyone to validate anything. You become a complete field where there is no signal of lack, and that is why everything you once sought begins to find you." Mechanism of the inner world and Jung's analysis. When Carla stopped demanding external validation, she not only changed how she loved, but also entered a deeper stage, confronting the internal mechanisms that truly governed her life. All our experiences, relationships, failures, or repeating emotional loops originate from the psychological energy field emanating from the deepest layers of our being. In analytical psychology, Jung clearly distinguished between ego desire and the call of the self. When the ego desires something not out of love, but out of emptiness, it unconsciously activates unhealed, unintegrated parts of the mind, parts Jung called the shadow. These parts do not disappear just because you think more positively. On the contrary, the more suppressed they are, the more they manipulate the energy you emit. The more you try to be something you're not, the more you become an opposing shadow of yourself. Not because you are fake, but because you haven't faced where the desire began, lack. Pause and think about yourself. Have you ever walked into a room and felt something was off about someone, even if they were smiling brightly? Have you ever heard someone claim they've let go, but still sensed suppressed sadness radiating from them. This is the phenomenon of energy, not something mystical, but a living vibration emanating from the psychological mechanism. Jung believed that consciousness is not just words or thoughts, but also images filled with emotions, accumulating in the unconscious and radiating outwards as a frequency. In Man and His Symbols, he wrote that the mind essentially consists of images, a self-regulating system expressed through images. Drop a like in the comments if you've ever felt someone's energy just by their presence. Keep listening, because what you're about to realize could change how you connect with yourself. This explains why, even if you say, "I'm fine," "I've let go," or "I'm confident," others can sense if the true vibration within you is trembling. The ego can lie, but energy cannot. The danger is when the ego acts out of fear, but labels it positively as, "I'm just trying," or "I'm in love." That's when the shadow becomes truly powerful. Jung warned that accepting the shadow side of our nature is a moral problem, the essence of individuation. Only when you dare to look at the vibration emanating from the shadow, control, fear, insecurity, do you begin the journey of individuation, the journey back to the complete self, where no part needs to be hidden. Individuation, according to Jung, is not about becoming a better version of yourself, but about returning to the center of your being, where every broken piece within you is seen and harmonized. When you still emit vibrations from lack, you operate from an unhealed ego. But when you live from the center, from the self, you no longer need to control, persuade, or chase. You simply exist with inner abundance. At that moment, you no longer send the signal, "Come to me so I can feel whole," but emit a silent field. I am myself, and I am enough. Are you living from your center, or are you sending a begging signal for someone to validate your worth? Share in the comments, because that awareness is the first step to changing the vibration you carry. There is a subtle truth Jung realized early on. Others don't love you for what you do. They are attracted by the energy field you don't realize you are radiating. If that energy field emanates from an unintegrated shadow, you will attract people who trigger your wounds, not to punish, but to invite you to look deeper into what needs healing. In his research, Jung wrote that the self is not only the center, but also the entire circumference, encompassing both conscious and unconscious, both light and shadow within you. Therefore, if you wonder why you keep meeting the same type of person, or why you feel misunderstood despite trying so hard, the answer may lie in the frequency you emit, not in what you think of yourself. Only when you dare to look inward, not to hide or fix, but to integrate all parts of yourself, do you enter the state Jung called the wholeness of the self, a state where you no longer need to send begging signals because you are transmitting truth. Are you ready to return to your center? If so, comment a single word: present. Complete presence is what makes your energy attractive. Without seeking, you will attract everything that truly resonates with you. Story 2. Natalia. After understanding that energy from a wounded ego can unconsciously attract repetitive experiences, we realize a more important truth. Understanding alone is not liberation. The mind can declare, "I have let go." But if the inner energy still emits clinging signals, you are still on the same frequency, and the world will continue to reflect that. no matter how many books you read or videos you watch. Natalia's story illustrates this clearly and movingly. Natalia, 40, was a strong, deep woman who survived a toxic relationship that almost drained her soul. After the breakup, she embarked on a journey of rebuilding herself, learning about self-love, therapy, meditation, journaling, and even starting a small blog to share her recovery process. Everyone around her saw her as a woman who had overcome her pain, and Natalia herself believed it too. She felt confident, peaceful, ready for a new relationship, until a man appeared. At first, Natalia maintained her balance, but just a few days after the first conversations, she found herself checking her phone more frequently, analyzing every message, guessing what he was really thinking. Every time he was silent a little longer, a wave of anxiety washed over her. She didn't say anything or act impulsively, but her mind spun. If he doesn't reply, what does that mean? Did I do something wrong? Will this time also end like before? In a pivotal therapy session, the therapist quietly observed and said, "Your mind has let go, but your energy is still clinging." Natalia was stunned. She never thought she could deceive herself. The truth was that all her efforts, meditation, sharing, writing, stemmed from the motive of not wanting to be like before, to ensure this time would be different. Deep inside, her energy still sent the old message, "I need something external to feel safe, to ensure I won't be hurt again." Jung wrote in the Red Book, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain." Natalia was not wrong to believe she had let go. She just hadn't reached the end of the truth. Her deepest fear still silently controlled her energy. Unprocessed energy acts as a repetitive script in various forms. You change partners, environments, behaviors, but still attract experiences with the same core: abandonment, misunderstanding, lack. Jung called this repetition compulsion, the unconscious urge to relive an unresolved experience. In Psychology and Alchemy, he wrote, "The patient can only be cured when he begins to see the contents of the unconscious and integrate them into a whole personality. Healing only happens when you dare to face and integrate unconscious contents into your complete self." The truth is that your vibration always speaks before your words. Others don't withdraw because you lack something specific, but because they unconsciously sense an energy field that demands to be filled. They sense a burden you may not realize you're carrying. Natalia didn't utter any pleas, but her energy field sent a clear request. "Give me certainty. Ensure I won't be hurt again." When that energy appeared, love could not flow freely. It became distorted, carrying the burden of healing that no one but you can bear. If you ask yourself why you keep attracting the same type of person, perhaps it's time to stop questioning the external world and listen to yourself. Ask yourself, what am I radiating that I dare not acknowledge? Connection cannot develop on an energy foundation warped by fear. The more you seek safety in others, the further you drift from your center. And the world, as Jung said, does not respond to what you want, but to who you are being. The good news is that the moment you realize this, as Natalia did, you have already begun to change your vibration. And that alone, without validation from anyone, is enough to transform your entire story. The difference between control and letting go. Imagine a moment when you sigh, look at your phone, and think, "I won't text anymore, I'm fine." But a few minutes later, you secretly unlock your phone, waiting for a message or some sign to prove you're still cared for. Outwardly, you tell yourself you're letting go, but inside your entire nervous system is on high alert. That is not peace. That is control, disguised as silence. At the crossroads between mature behavior and prolonged clinging energy, a hard lesson begins. A lesson that leads to profound transformation. Control is not strength, but the survival reflex of an unhealed ego. Natalia realized this, not through words, but by experiencing it in her body, in her energy, in how she faced uncertainty. It was then that the door to the core difference between control and letting go opened, not through intellect, but through vibrational experience. We often equate control with strength, action, or doing something to ensure nothing falls apart. In reality, control is the contraction of consciousness, fear wrapped in a rational explanation. The ego trying to manage uncertainty through analysis, speculation, intervention, and sometimes feigned indifference. Jung taught that the ego seeks to control what the soul has not integrated. The mask of logic makes control a wound. You don't act from strength, you act from fear, unwilling to acknowledge it. Imagine you start a new relationship, and the other person texts less for a day. You feel compelled to do something. Text first, stay silent to see if they notice, or ask indirect questions to gauge their mood. None of these actions are inherently wrong, but consider the inner state driving them. If it stems from an inability to tolerate uncertainty, then you are not connecting. You are controlling. Jung spoke not just about behavior, but about the motive behind it. He wrote that when an inner situation remains unconscious, it appears outside as fate. If you don't realize that you are governed by the fear of losing control, you will continue to attract situations that force you to control until you are exhausted or awaken. You either live from your center or you control everything from the fear of abandonment. Realizing this is the first step to letting go, not from exhaustion, but from awareness. Letting go is not standing still, waiting for a miracle. Letting go is the most powerful act of a mind at rest within itself. That is when you don't need to force reality into the ego's script. That is when you don't need to check, control, manipulate, or correct reality because you trust that what belongs to you will come effortlessly, and what doesn't belong to you only brings pain when you try to hold on. A vivid example is Lena's healing journey. When she started a new relationship, everything was harmonious at first. But gradually, whenever her partner was silent, Lena began to analyze every dot, every pause, every word choice. She didn't complain or show it outwardly, but inside, she silently constricted herself and her partner with expectations and anxiety. Inevitably, the energy between them began to withdraw. When she asked why, her partner could only say that something felt heavy without a clear reason. Lena realized that it wasn't her partner who was wrong, but that she was still operating from a place of control, disguised as a desire to understand. Jung did not teach letting go as a mere technique, but as a process of inner maturation. He taught that letting go is not weakness, but the courage to stop warring with yourself. That is when you don't need certainty to feel safe, don't need others' reactions to feel loved, don't need control to protect yourself from abandonment. If you live in clinging energy to avoid loss, remember that control does not keep you safe. It only keeps you away from real life. Sometimes, the most important step is not knowing the next step, but daring to stand still and do nothing, to feel what you are still clinging to out of fear instead of love. You might realize you are controlling under the guise of seeking reassurance that you are not alone. Now, you have another choice. Share the phrase, "I am letting it go," if you choose to step out of controlling energy and into a magnetic state where life comes without pulling, just by trust. The power of presence. But letting go doesn't mean you disappear. Not controlling doesn't mean you become passive. This brings us to a dimension few truly understand, what Carl Jung called the true center of spiritual life. The power of presence. If control is an action born of fear, then presence is a state of wholeness, stemming not from action, but from an inner state of steadfast peace, demanding nothing from the world. It is energy that does not chase, does not defend, does not seek validation. It simply exists. Vibrational presence is not measured by how long you meditate each day or how many seconds you stay silent. It is the living energy field you emit when your mind, emotions, and body are no longer running to the future or shrinking into the past. That is when you are truly here, not possessed by anxiety, expectations, or hidden fears. Jung wrote in The Undiscovered Self that freedom only extends to the limits of our consciousness. If you are not fully present, you still live within the unconscious realm of control, where your energy reacts instead of chooses. Think of someone you've met whose presence in a room brought a feeling of comfort, safety, or new vitality. They might not be stunningly beautiful, not talk much, not try to prove anything, but they appeared completely. That is the power of presence, unpretentious, without tactics, yet the entire space around them changed. If you're still reading, pause for a moment, put your phone down, close your eyes for 5 seconds. Realize if you are here with me or if your body is sitting, but your mind has wandered elsewhere. This is a small test of presence. If you realize you're not fully here, you're not alone, because presence doesn't come from intention, but from practice. Jung described the process of returning to the center of the self, individuation, as a journey through layers of illusion, wounds, and unconscious reflexes until only unconditional presence remains. In Psychology and Alchemy, he wrote that the self is the magnificent union of opposites. Only when you stop trying to be smarter, more lovable, more independent, do you begin to be fully present as the complete, undivided self. A beautiful example is Daniela's story. For years, she fell into a loop, meeting new people, feeling excited, and letting anxiety take over. She analyzed every message, waited for positive reactions to feel safe. All of it exhausted her. Until one day, she made what she called a radical silent decision. She didn't withdraw from life, she withdrew from reaction. She stopped chasing connection, stopped strategizing, and every day simply practiced presence in her body, breath, heartbeat, quiet space, not forcing herself to feel better, just showing up more genuinely. A week passed, then 2 weeks. Nothing dramatic happened, but gradually she realized she was no longer agitated when she didn't receive a response. She no longer clung to small changes like a life raft. She felt clear. From that clarity, the connections that came to her no longer repeated the old script. no tension, no struggle, because she was no longer attracted by lack, but by a magnetic field of steadfast presence. You might ask how to achieve that presence. The answer is not in a checklist. It lies in letting go of having to do something to become something. Jung did not teach self-improvement like a machine. He invited us to live fully with the self that already exists. He wrote that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are, and that becoming does not come from chasing something new, but from stopping long enough to realize you've always been here. Just be present. If this resonates, leave a word in the comments. Present. Not as a YouTube habit, but as a reminder that you once forgot yourself somewhere and are now returning. No more chasing, no more controlling, just presence. From there, everything begins to change, not because of what you do, but because you have finally truly become yourself. Vibrational detachment. Though presence is powerful, it doesn't appear naturally as a gift. It comes from a deep inner discipline, stopping reaction, observing instead of controlling, and facing yourself in the stillness you once tried to fill. Presence cannot exist in a mind dominated by anxiety. That's when you need to step into a key Jungian practice, vibrational detachment. Not to become cold, but to return to your complete self, undisturbed by the need for external validation. Vibrational detachment does not mean indifference or lack of desire. It is the highest commitment that you will not betray yourself just to maintain an unhealthy connection. It begins by daring to recognize the subtle signs that you are chasing from an energy of lack. Not because you are weak, but because you are used to a dependent vibration. That vibration can speak for you through every message, every pause, every glance. You might find yourself unable to tolerate a moment of silence in a relationship. Every minute without a reply makes your mind chaotic. Your imagination runs wild, and your hands itch to act. Write something, ask a question, or check the other person's status. That is not your true nature. That is the frequency of lack dominating your system. Jung warned in The Psychology of the Transference that an activated complex causes us to be temporarily controlled by an autonomous personality. This means our unhealed wounds take control of our action, while we believe we are reacting rationally, though in reality, we are manipulated from within. Or you might find yourself unable to tolerate not knowing what the other person thinks or feels. You constantly need validation, signs, or repeated assurances to feel safe. But that need does not come from the present, but from a hidden anxiety that has lived within you for a long time. If you are easily agitated, cannot wait, always need explanations to stabilize your emotions, then perhaps you are not loving, but communicating through the vibration of lack. The world senses that as a cry for help, even if you don't utter a word. The way out of this invisible loop is not more action, but learning to stop the moment the impulse arises. The moment you want to send an unnecessary message. Feel compelled to do something to maintain connection. Jung pointed out in the Red Book that within each of us there is a part we do not know. That part speaks to us in dreams, showing us that we are different from how we see ourselves. When you stop, you begin to listen to that deep part, the part that needs no control, no reaction, just presence. You can start with a small step. Do nothing for the first 3 minutes of restlessness. Just breathe. Don't touch your phone. Don't seek distraction. Then ask yourself, do you want to act because you are present or because you are afraid? That is the practice of vibrational detachment, where you act not from anxiety, but from your quiet center. Create a quiet space daily, even if only for 10 minutes. No screens, no one else, just you and your breath. In that space, whisper, I am not chasing, I am not clinging, I am present. You don't need to believe it immediately. Just repeat until the new vibration imprints itself on your body, little by little. If you still return to the question of how to be loved, reverse it and ask, what part of me still doesn't believe I am worthy? Jung reminded that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Vibrational detachment is not about doing better, but daring to live more consciously, recognizing what is happening and choosing not to repeat it. Conclusion. When you stop chasing, stop demanding, stop trying to be seen, a miracle begins. You become what you once sought. You no longer send signals of lack, no longer manipulate with fear, no longer need anyone to understand you to feel valuable. You don't attract with strategy, sweet words, or false perfection. You attract with the true frequency of who you are. When you are fully present and don't deny yourself, you shine. You don't need to attract, you just need to live true to your frequency. True radiance does not come from effort, but from the clarity in life's energy. When you stop chasing, not just in action, but also in unconscious vibration, you no longer run after what you want. You remain in your truth. And from that still point, you emit an irresistible field, a captivating stillness, a comfortable state that allows what doesn't fit to fall away, and what is right to come to you. Therefore, you don't need to become someone else. You just need to return to your own center. Let stillness speak for you. Let your energy radiate before you enter a room. Let the inner wholeness become the silent call the world cannot ignore. You don't need to be chosen, because you have chosen yourself, and that is an irresistible vibration. If these insights touch the depths of your being, your desire to live authentically, freely, and heal from within, then continue the journey back to yourself, where you don't need to chase anything, because everything essential is always within you,